Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Court grants suspended CBN governor bail to the tune of 20 million naira. Police arrest 4 suspects in plot to attack PDP presidential candidate, others in Yola, the Adamawa state capital. Plus, state governors roll out measures to cushion impact of fuel subsidy removal and pump price hike. Welcome to the program once again. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin with a story developing today. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has granted bail to the suspended Central Bank of Nigeria governor, Mr. Emefiele, in the sum of 20 million naira with one surety in like sum. Justice Nicholas Uwebo granted bail after listening to the submissions of Emefiele's counsel, Joseph Daudu, senior advocate of Nigeria. The judge rejected the federal government's claim that Mr. Emefiele was a flight risk. He ruled that the government failed to provide any fact to support its claim. Mr. Emefiele had also pleaded not guilty to 2-count charge of illegal possession of firearm and ammunition filed against him by the federal government. In his submissions, legal practitioner Mr. Daudu had urged the court to grant bail on self-recognizance or on other liberal terms pending the hearing and determination of the trial. But counsel to the federal government, Nkiru Jones-Nebo, in an oral submission, opposed the bail application, insisting that the prosecution had not been given time to respond in line with the provisions of fair hearing enshrined in the Constitution. She also said that the prosecution had information that the defendant's refusal to hand in his passport suggests his capacity to evade and abscond from his trial. The judge also ordered that Mr. Emefiele should be held at the Ikoyi Correctional Center pending the perfection of his bail. Trial has been fixed for November the 14th, 2023. On to other stories now. Former Vice President and presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, has alleged that 4 persons who plotted to attack him have been arrested by police in Yola, the Adamawa state capital. Reacting to the incident, the PDP said it was alarmed and demands a comprehensive investigation into the matter. Former Deputy National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Comrade Timi Frank, also called on the federal government to urgently investigate the attack on Mr. Abubakar and beef up security around him, while commending the police for the work that they continue to do in this particular investigation. A statement by the media aide said that a man seeking to confirm his residence of Mr. Abubakar in Yola was apprehended at the gate of his residence. The man who was apprehended was later handed over to police upon further interrogation by police. He said the suspect identified himself as a 29-year-old who confessed to being a Boko Haram member. Well, while commending the police for the work that they continue to do in the investigation, they're asking relevant security agencies to remain on top of their brief. Well, in the meantime, the command's public relations officer in Yola, Suleiman Nguroje, explains that the suspects have been transferred to the military for further investigation.
House that is situated at Dogire cited somebody around the house whom they reasonably suspect to be a criminal, and he looked very strange. There and then they intimated the police, who were very close. Upon interrogation, the very suspect at hand confessed to have been a member of Boko Haram, who added that himself and somebody were deployed from Sambisa to come and make an assessment of the state house for them to carry out their own attack. And he further stated that there was a place, Modibo Adama Central Mosque is equally a place that they want to carry out an attack. So upon hearing that, the Commissioner of Police immediately directed that the other suspect whom he said is with him to be pressed. And luckily he was pressed and equally brought along. Considering the fact that military are usually the one that are always entertaining terrorism activity, and coupled with the synergy that normally exists, the Commissioner of Police there and then directed that the military should take over because they have a lot of questions to ask. The two apprehended suspects were handed over to the 23 military brigade for interrogation, and the command equally deployed its own machinery, operational assets to ensure the environment in Adamawa State is safe and secure. Surveillance were equally deployed, intelligence operations were equally deployed.
That is also another developing story. We'll bring you more updates as soon as we know it. To electoral matters now. The immediate past convener of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, NLB, is calling for the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, to be held accountable for the conduct of the 2023 general elections, particularly for the funds used in conducting the polls. Speaking on our breakfast program, Sunrise Daily, she says Nigerians must demand answers from Mr. Yakubu on how monies were spent for the election.
I'm not the one to even demand. Are Nigerians asking questions to the INEC chairman or the commission itself? They got billions of naira. And what we were asking them yesterday, some of my colleagues have pulled it out. I've called severally that you went into the election with over 173,000 polling units. That's 173,606 polling units. That's for the general election, for the national presidential and the National Assembly election. How many polling units did you hold the election? We asked for audit because each of the polling units is marked by the personnel that has been paid for by the people of Nigeria. Should Nigerians be asking, is it only NLB that will be asking the questions? I think you as media too should be asking that question. Is it me is it from my mouth? You want to hear Professor Mahmood resign because you are incompetent. He had the capacity, but what happened? Let me say the political class, if they held you down, did you make the Nigerian people know? Or are you going to write your own? You'll be writing your history, you'll be saying, you'll be keeping quiet for other people, you take the heat for other people. Take the heat for politicians, they are not your friends. As a Nigerian, should we stand up right and demand accountability? I demand accountability. I say for every kobo that was taken, it should be committed. Women are dying on the maternity death road. So a guy called me yesterday, he said, I don't have any work. My wife had a baby. In a general hospital, they have asked me to pay 350,000. If not, my wife cannot be released from the hospital. So people are dying on the maternity death road. Women are dying, children are dying, and then we are talking about, you spending billions that should have been set up, that would have built so many hospitals, and then you are not accounting for it. They should account for it. Everybody should go down to accountability. For every of that penny, it must be accounted for.
And to other stories, in line with the current realities in the country, some state governors are rolling out several measures to cushion the impact of fuel subsidy removal and the price hike in the country. In Ogun State, while a cash palliative has been offered to public servants, in Kwara, the government has announced a multi-million naira palliative. Here's more in this report.
There have been calls from various quarters for the provision of palliatives to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy.
Something should be done about this issue of fuel. Mr. President should hear us out.
Some state governors are, however, doing their bit to help ameliorate the living standards of Nigerians. In Kwara, the state government has announced a multi-million naira palliative scheme that cuts across various sectors. The scheme includes distribution of cash and food items to indigents, as well as reduced work days for civil servants.
His Excellency has approved what I will call a slew of multi-billion naira palliatives to neutralize the effect of recent removal of fuel subsidy. This cuts across different sectors, MDAs, and of course, different demographics. It is not just limited to public sector workers. The governor has also approved the extension of free bus rides for students of tertiary institutions in the state, while modalities for occasional distribution of food to poor and most vulnerable households are to be activated in the next few days. On top of the palliatives is a cash support of 10,000 naira for every public sector worker in the state.
Meanwhile, in Ogun State, Governor Dakpo Abiodun has approved cash distribution of 10,000 naira to each public servant for a period of 3 months, distribution of food items to the poor, distribution of fertilizers and other farm inputs to farmers at subsidized rates, among other welcomed interventions. In Edo State, Governor Godwin Obaseki approved the reduction of working days for civil servants in the state to 3 times a week. Further south, the governors of Bayelsa and Rivers states have approved the provision of vehicles to help their indigents access affordable transport. Governor Umoino of Akwa Ibom State has announced an agreement with Innocent Motors to provide easy and accessible transportation to residents. As the federal government moves to find lasting solutions to the sufferings faced by Nigerians as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy, all eyes are on the other governors to see how they can also provide palliatives for the people.
And to the National Assembly now, where the President of the Senate has assured traditional rulers of a constitutional role in governance, which he says will be effected through constitution amendment. Senator Godswill Akpabio gave the assurance to traditional rulers during a meeting with the royal fathers across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory on Monday. He says the roles of the royal fathers in governance, particularly on security matters, are very important, emphasizing that it's his belief and the entire Senate leadership that if the traditional rulers are constitutionally engaged in governance at the grassroots, the myriad of security challenges facing the country would be a thing of the past. Earlier in his speech on behalf of the traditional rulers, the Etsu of Nupe, Dr. Yahya Abubakar explains that the constitutional role of traditional rulers was expunged by framers of the 1979 Constitution. He says all efforts made by traditional rulers across the country under the aegis of a National Council of Traditional Rulers to get back the role had not yielded any fruit. Well, to talk more about that, joining me now is Mr. Mitchell Gatishe, legal practitioner, joins me virtually. Thanks, Mitchell, for joining me on the program. Is there a constitutional basis for the Nigerian Senate assuring traditional rulers, yes, of a constitutional role in governance? Do you think that their inclusion aligns with the principles of democracy, rule of law?
Thank you very much, Vincent, and I'm very happy to be here this afternoon. I think I would like to take a step back, and that is the basis upon which the National Assembly is assuring them. Well, I believe the National Assembly, of course, can put those matters on the table because, of course, constitutional amendments basically emanate from the National Assembly. But I doubt that an assurance can be given. I think what it is that an assurance that these matters will be looked into as against an assurance that that constitutional role will be guaranteed. And I say so because for constitutional amendments, you require 2/3 of the state houses of assembly to basically accede to that proposal. So that's a first step. And of course, you also would need the president to give his assent. And all these are basically outside of the remit of what the National Assembly can do. Now, as to whether or not this is the right step, I think it's a very interesting step. I hold back from saying the right step because there are a number of modalities that would need to be put in place. But I say interesting because there can be potential positives that come from that. And let me explain. As it is today, traditional rulers, specifically in specific parts of Nigeria, have a level of reverence that is accorded to them. There's a level of respect that is given to them. And that respect and reverence is basically derived from traditional basis of rulership and governance. And that level of respect and reverence is something that even constituted authority, being state governors as well as the federal executive, tend to rely upon when they want to basically drive things from the grassroots level, because they know that people at the grassroots have a certain level of respect, nearness, and reverence to people who are traditional rulers. So of course, if we're able to then formalize that structure to the Constitution, give them specific roles to play, guarantee the funding that they receive, etc., then of course it might be useful. But I just want to add that we should also begin to think as to how we can also utilize such traditional, should I say, rulers, or the fact of our having those traditional rulers, even from the perspective of, tourism, generating inflow into the country, etc. If I draw a quick parallel with the United Kingdom, for example, you would see that even when the royal weddings occur, there is a significant amount of money that is injected into the system, right? Vis-a-vis from tourists, etc. However, the role that the constitutional role of the King of England, as well as the royal family, while not spelled out in a constitution, because the UK doesn't have a written constitution, it is the case that they are not basically put in a role that they ever interfere with democratically elected, should I say, officials. In other words, while the King of England assents to laws, etc., they cannot actually express a viewpoint as to how things will be run. And I think that kind of balance is something that we can achieve in Nigeria if we're thinking to put it in the Constitution, in that the traditional rulers themselves should never really stray into things that should be reserved for elected office. So they should have a conventional role that, basically relies on their influence as against actually executing functions that has not been given to them by the people.
So essentially specific powers, specific responsibilities, in the whole governance structure. Many wonder, especially on the question of funding, if indeed this is a needed amendment to the Constitution, and if indeed it will also get that legal backing, the numbers that it needs. But there's also a school of thought that talks about how does the assurance of, this role for the Constitution for traditional rulers align with perhaps the principles of equity and non-discrimination?
Okay, thank you. I don't think that it brings any issue to play in terms of equity and non-discrimination. And I say that because, as a matter of fact, today, de facto, these traditional rulers exist. De facto, these traditional rulers exercise functions. De facto, these traditional rulers actually basically garner responses to their pronouncements, etc., even though there is no quote-unquote constitutional basis for them to so do. So we're a culture that already accords a certain level of respect to our traditional rulers. So I don't begin to see that issues relating to inequity, non-discrimination will arise. However, I think it might be a useful opportunity such that traditional practices that are sometimes basically advanced by our traditional rulers on the basis of history, on the basis of tradition, that are actually inconsistent, right, with non-discrimination, with basically the fundamental rights of human beings, etc., can then be basically dealt with in that constitution, such that some of the untoward practices that we hear of from certain communities advanced by certain traditional rulers can then be clipped, right, and brought in consistency, with the general framework of the Constitution.
Let's not forget, and perhaps if you can answer this question in 30 seconds, one of the essence of this is on security matters, which is a big problem the country is grappling with at the moment. Do you see this tackling it to a large extent? One wonders, can they not also aid in curbing insecurity, the status that they have now without a constitutional backing?
Thank you. I think, I'm not sure about tackling, but I think it would have an effect. And I say so because as it stands today, they already utilize their influence to seek to bring about peace in their communities. But the truth of the matter is that a number of the things that they might propose or say or assurances they might give to the restive people, they cannot back it up beyond their words. They sometimes still have to go cap in hand to the governors to basically say, look, we've reached this agreement, can you approve it? And that creates another level of bureaucracy. And if those things are not then effected by the people who have the authority, being your state governors and the like, then these traditional rulers are, and this happens, sometimes seen as unworthy negotiators because their word does not have backing. So of course, if they have a limited should I say, limited executory functions that is backed by the Constitution, they can make decisions and those will be effected immediately as it relates to their domain. I believe it might have an appreciable effect. However, I don't think that is the general solution to the insecurity we face. We still have substantive issues to deal with, substantive issues dealing with welfare of the people, provision of jobs, such that people are not idle, education such that people are thinking in the right manner, and of course, effective security, right, including community policing, which has been brought into place by the Police Act. So there are a number of tools that we already have in place today, a number of things that we should already address today within the constitutional framework that I believe has not been so addressed, and that has also contributed to the insecurity. So of course, having the traditional rulers with a formal role would add to the tool of the arsenal, but I don't think it will be the, should I say, silver bullet, right, that resolves all our insecurity issues today.
Michelle Agatishe, thank you for taking out time from your lunchtime to join us.
Thank you very much, Millicent. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Cheers.
All the best. We're back with more when we return. Do stay with us. Welcome back. And all multiple taxes on transit cargoes along the ECOWAS corridor are to be reviewed. An import prohibition policy between Nigeria and Benin Republic harmonized. Those were the agreements reached by the Nigeria Customs Service and the Benin Republic counterparts during a working visit by the Acting Controller General of Customs, Adewale Adeniyi, during a working visit to the country. Mr. Adeniyi explains that Nigerian Customs Service will ensure that the agreement signed by both countries is reviewed periodically.
The objective of the visit was for us to renew friendship with the Customs Administration of Benin and also to deepen collaborations in areas of common interest. And this visit has afforded me to see up close some of the progress that has been made by the Customs Administration under the guidance of President Talon, whose objective seems to be the fact that the economy of Benin must be very, very competitive. I saw the attention that was given to the port of Cotonou, and I saw the progress that has been made in terms of reducing clearance time, in terms of ensuring that there was no congestion in the ports, and more importantly, using technology to drive operations of the customs administrations. We saw the plan for future expansion of the ports to even handle bigger cargo and contribute more to the prosperity of Benin.
Well, we head to Cross River State, where the governor, Basio, too, has charged the state judiciary on cooperation and fairness in dispensing their duties as judges, as they are the only hope of the common man. The governor was speaking during a courtesy visit by the state's chief judge, Justice Emefiele, who led other members of the inner bench on a congratulatory visit to the governor. He maintains that the appeal has become imperative in order to build a complete new relationship and continuous synergy among the various arms of government.
Permit me to say that no society can function without justice. You remain the passion of the common man, the last hope. And I'm happy that in Cross River State, to some extent, we've been able to abide with the dictates of our Constitution. But I want to say that we'll begin to build a complete new relationship where we're going to build confidence in each and every arm of government.
The Trade Union Congress, TUC, is threatening to besiege the National Assembly should the government continue to delay in implementing policies that will address inflation, cushion other effects of the fuel subsidy removal on citizens. President of the TUC, Mr. Festus Osifo, stated this at a news conference in Abuja, where he decried the delay in the implementation of recommendations the organised labour made to government on how to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. The Labour leader states that the timeline for the implementation of those recommendations is mid-August, is urging the federal government to expedite action as the union will not hesitate to besiege the National Assembly.
If you could remember, we had a NEC meeting in TUC, and our NEC mandated us to continuously engage government, even while we insist that status quo should remain. And we told that part, we continuously had that engagement. As of today, we have formed technical committees on cash transfer, we formed technical committees on intervention funds, we formed technical committees on wage awards, we formed technical committees on the reduction of the cost of governance, we formed technical committee on energy and power. So there was a timeline, and that timeline was 8 weeks from 19th of June. Today, we have spent more than 1 month. We felt that the traction, we are not going at the speed that we anticipated. So we want government to fast track and ensure that between now and the next 2 weeks, all the committees must have submitted their report. All the committees must have put in their report so that the steering committee, the presidential steering committee, can conclude its work almost immediately. Because we cannot continuously speak grammar. The executive, the legislatures, the judiciary, they must lead from the front, while we follow them from behind as the followers. But a situation whereby they are pushing a lot of poverty to the masses and they are living in affluence, we will not allow that to work.
You've been served lunch this day. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. I'll see you again.